welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode 397. I'm your host, Luis Scott-Vargas, along with, I guess you're in, at this point, midnight, so in cold, dreary Seattle, Marshall Sutcliffe.
Hey, how's it going, Luis? Thanks for doing the intro.
It is my pleasure. Since Marshall summarily defeated me at the Team Draft Super League tonight, we've decided to switch roles. So he'll be coming with the expert analysis, and I'll basically just be making it sound okay, and kind of dealing with the logistics, like all the stuff that really anyone could do. But
that started out as a compliment and just transferred very smoothly into backhanded compliment.
So today we've got an hour of Devastation set review, rares and mythic rares. But before we get to that, let's talk about our sponsors. This show is brought to you by channelfireball.com, the best place to find Magic strategy on the internet. We've got awesome draft videos from Hall of Famers such as Ben Stark, Eric Froelich, and Luis Scott-Vargas, and also draft videos from Marshall Sutcliffe. We have tons of great free content. It's a great place to buy cards, and you can trade your cards in. So check out channelfireball.com for your gaming needs. This show is also brought to you by you. Yes, the Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/limited resources, you can support the show for any amount you want per month. You get access to pictures of Luis in various positions during the Pro Tour.
In hotel rooms.
Also, tons of other stuff, which I don't know about because I'm not actually a Patreon member, nor do I have access to the paywall. So I assume there's good stuff there. At least that's what Marshall tells me.
There is.
All right. With that, let's get to the show. Marshall, what are we doing today?
All right. So today is the set review, rare and mythic rare for Hour of Devastation. First, let's cover our grading system because we do use that for each and every card. We go deep into depth on each card to really find out which ones are the good ones and which ones are the ones better left passing down the line to somebody else so that when you hit your tournaments, release weekend coming up, and of course drafts and sealed and all that kind of stuff going forward, you have a solid baseline from which to start. Luis, do you want to go over the grading scale here?
I can go over the grading scale. We're going to start with A's. These are bombs, game winners, cards that are good in many situations, especially when behind. These are the best cards in the set and hyper-efficient spells. You're going to see a lot of A's today. That's where they tend to hang out in the rare and mythic rare review. You've got cards like Glorybringer, Archfiend of Ifnir, and Angel of Sanctions. Just easy A's, A pluses even. Next up, we've got B's. These are cards that actively pull you towards their colors. They're headliners for a set, go-to cards, and reasons to be in a specific combination of colors, clan, or guild. Solid removal often gets a B as well. These are cards like Uncrop Crasher, Cast Out, and Angler Drake. C, these are playable. These are the pawns of limited. They're interchangeable. You need some amount of these for your deck. Every deck's going to have some amount of C's, and this is where combat tricks and mediocre removal tends to land. Cards like Bitterblade Warrior, Minotaur Sure Shot, and Shed Weakness. Next up, we've got D's. These are the sometimes playable, you'd prefer not to run them, mediocre and junky cards, sometimes situational, often with a high setup cost. These are cards that sometimes make the cut, not very happy about it. Cards like Miasmic Mummy, Supply Caravan, and Giant Spider. Lastly, we have F, unplayable in virtually all scenarios, or incredibly narrow cards, incredibly expensive cards. You're going to see a lot more Fs today, too. This is the other place that rares and mythics tend to hang out. So you've got cards like Luxa River Shrine, Dispossess, Hazaret's Favor, and Embalmer's Tools. We've got two other categories that are subcategories. We've got sideboard, so cards with a sideboard grade will get an A through F as well, but specifically for the sideboard, these are cards that rarely, if ever, make the main deck, but they can be very powerful out of the sideboard. And these are cards like Dissenter's Deliverance, Blazing Volley, in this very set, an Hour of Devastation, we've got the cycle of defeats, like Chandra's defeats and Gideon's defeat. Lastly, we've got build around. These are cards that are not good enough on their own, but if you properly build around them, they can be awesome. And they get a grade on the same scale, but again, with the build around tag. These are cards like Drake Haven, Faith of the Devoted, Sandworm Convergence. So those are our grading scales. And like I mentioned, you're going to see more A's and more F's than you would in the commons and uncommons, but there's going to be cards all on every point of the scale.
Yeah, and more polar, like you said, for these ones. All right, let's get right into it. We're going to be starting with red this time around, and that means our first rare is called Chaos Maw. It's 5 red for a 6/6 Hellion. So before I tell you what it says for the rules text, Luis, how do you feeling about a 7-mana 6/6?
7-mana 6/6 is below average. You need something else to make that playable. Like
right.
compare this to Greater Sandworm, which I think got a little better, by the way. But in either case, that's a 7-mana 7/7 with multiple upsides, and it's still not great.
Right. And this one does have a significant upside, though, as you might expect as a rare. It's when it enters the battlefield, it deals 3 damage to each other creature.
So 7 drops do need to do a fair amount to get a good grade because 7 is right at the border of not castable in most games. 8 is, I think, above that border where you actually have to do specific work. 7 is, most games aren't going to get to 7, but you can get there without trying too hard if you just have a few ways to delay the game. But one thing that these all share, if they're good, is they have a big effect on the board when you play them, especially when you're behind, because if you're waiting on a 7 drop, you are often behind. Chaos Mod does that.
Yeah.
It's going to wipe the board of most, if not all, of other creatures your opponent has, and often leave 1 or 2 of your creatures standing because you're probably drafting a deck with giant spiders and cards along that line. So,
what do you think about the fact that it's red?
Red typically wants to be aggressive. That's the one thing keeping this from being truly awesome, but I still think it's quite good. I think that you can draft like a red-green ramp deck, and if you have this as your headliner, you're doing pretty well. Like this card will, as advertised, be a bomb rare once you cast it. And not all 7 drops live up to that. Like you can lose the turn you cast Greater Slam very easily.
Yeah.
The turn you cast Chaos Maw, it's a little harder.
Yeah, it's quite harder. Yeah, I have Chaos Maw at a B+. I don't quite have it in that top range because it happens to be in red, which conflicts a little. It kills a lot of the red creatures in the set, so you do need to set it up. I think you're right. I think green-red is where you're going to see it. It's harder to imagine this type of card in like a black-red deck or something like that. A red-white deck doesn't really want a 7-drop most of the time. So I think it might have a little bit of a trouble finding a home, but when you do play it, it's worth your 7 mana, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think Chaos Maw is a B+ as well. It's the kind of card you want early. It's almost a build around, but not quite, where you end up, if you draft this, trying to build a deck around it because it is that good. But it's also just good in any kind of mid-range deck. It's not good in aggressive decks. But
yeah, B+. The one other knock on it is that it doesn't kill eternalized creatures.
True.
So and there's enough of those around that it might just nudge it down just a little bit. All right, next card is called Earthshaker Kenra. It is 1 and a red. This is a much different card, by the way. Only 2 mana for a 2/1 Jackal Warrior with haste. And when it enters the battlefield, target creature with power less than or equal to Earthshaker Kenra's power can't block this turn. So you've got 2 mana, 2/1 haste that says your 2 power creature can't block, or 1 power or 0 power until end of turn, and then it's going to jam. But here's the kicker. It's got Eternalized, 4 red. So it can come back later as a 4/4, still has haste, remember, and basically says something, pretty big, can't block this turn, 4 or less power.
So this card is a card that you would play on its front side. 2 mana, 2/1 haste,
for sure.
That makes a 2-drop or 2 power creature unable to block, you'd already just play. And the fact that it's eternalized is so good when you eternalize it, pushes this card up to, highly desirable. And I would play this in any deck, even like a mid-range deck, but obviously it does shine in aggressive decks.
Yeah, I think this card's like the thing is, where do you pick it? Like, is this the type of card that you're just like, oh, I did it. I open an Earthshaker Kenra, Windmill Slam, you're super happy, or is it just like a good card?
It's somewhere between those.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a B to me, solid, good card. Like if this card was uncommon, I wouldn't be shocked. This
feels like a B+ to me. I think that having this card is gonna, like, this is the kind of card that comes out on turn 2 or 4, somewhere in the early turns, forces through a little bit of damage, maybe trades for something, but then when it's in your graveyard, your opponent has to just like watch out for a 4/4 haste that makes one of their big creatures unable to block. That is going to be pretty tough.
Yeah, it is a big deal. Okay, you talked me into it. Earthshaker Kenra gets a B+. This next one, pretty good too. Hazoret's Undying Fury. It's 4 red for a sorcery. Sorry, this isn't the card I thought it was. This card sucks. It's shuffle your library, then exile the top 4 cards. You may cast any number of non-land cards with converted mana cost 5 or less from among them without paying their mana costs. And then, yes, this is one of those. Lands you control don't untap during your next untap step. Ugh.
So this card, I think, is pretty bad because you're going to miss a lot of the time. And even when you hit actual spells, it's not a guarantee they'll be great spells. And you don't untap. You basically skip your next turn of casting spells. If it didn't have that clause, this, I think, would be pretty interesting. But the fact that you're so much at the mercy of what this flips, and this is 2 turns worth of spells right here, that just doesn't seem like it's worth it for getting maybe a 2 or a 3 for 1. You're probably not going to get a 4 for 1.
Right. And that's the thing, is that you should think of it in those terms, right? Because, your average deck has about 40% lands. And that means that on average, you're going to hit a little more than 2 spells, if you average it out, right? And so if you're hitting between 2 and 3 spells each time, some spells are time specific. So if you have any counter spells, or a lot of combat tricks aren't very good if you're just sorcery speeding them out. Cards like that are going to be much worse, time sensitive cards. And then also, you can't go completely off. Like if one of the cards that you flip is a 6-drop, you just can't even cast it, right? You just exiled it, in fact. So that's a card pool is getting even smaller of cards that you can hit. And if you look at an average case scenario, like let's say I told you that you hit like 2 3-drops with this, right? That would be pretty good, right? It wouldn't be terrible. It would be okay. Like you would have, let's say, a 3/3 and a 2/3 with some abilities or whatever. That's still not great, given that you have to, you don't get to untap your lands. I think this card's just bad. I think like for example, I'll tell you how bad I think it is. I had it in my deck. It was one of my pre-release cards, and I just didn't even run it. And I was red.
I don't find that particularly shocking. I think even in a deck where every card in your deck is non-land card in your deck is a hit, this card is still not amazing.
Right. So I think it's just bad. I think you probably just shouldn't run it. I think it's weird because it's not as bad as an F, but I also just don't think you should put it in your deck. So I feel like just giving it an F. Like I just don't think you should run it.
I think Hazard's Undying Fury should get an F. And I think that you can point to games where it will be good, but I think overall the card is not good.
All right, now this is a card I thought I was reading before. Hour of Devastation is 3
this one's a little bit better.
This one's a little better. What does this one do?
It's 3 red for a sorcery, rare. All creatures lose indestructible until end of turn. Hour of Devastation deals 5 damage to each creature and each non-Bolas planeswalker.
So we have a red sweeper.
So this is a red sweeper, which means that you are not going to want to draft an aggressive deck all that much when you have this. It is exceedingly powerful, though. It's a 5-mana Wrath. It will kill basically everything. There's not a whole lot survives through this. It kills even indestructible creatures. There's tons of those. Mm-hmm. And it's the kind of card you can build a game plan around.
Yeah.
I think it's somewhere in the B+ A- range.
Yeah, I was going to give it a B+ again, and for similar reasons as the Chaos Maw. This one costs a lot less, but again, being in red is a little like maybe not perfectly set up to take advantage of it, where, if this was in white or black, it might just be, an A- type card. Also, this is not a true sweeper, right? There are a few things that survive it, and so it takes a little bit of an edge off of it there. So I kept it out of the A range and gave it a B+, which is still, a really good card.
I agree. In the right deck, it's going to be like a solid A, but it's just that deck's not going to come across that often, which means that if you first pick this, you're going to often end up with it and still going to be good. It's just not going to be as good as it would be if you knew you could draft a dedicated control deck. But I think a lot of times you're going to end up with Hour of Devastation in kind of like a mid-rangey red deck where you still lose all your creatures to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas like in the blue-red spells deck, for example, or like a red-green control deck that has it's a little slower and has more mana ramp. Yeah, this card is great. It is exactly what you want.
Totally.
So my guess is B+ for Hour of Devastation.
All right. Next one is called Imminent Doom, and I can tell you imminently it will not be getting a B+. It is 2 and a red for an enchantment. Luis, I did 2 pre-releases. Guess what my foil pre-release card was in both?
Imminent Doom.
Oh my God. I was like, not
It wouldn't
again.
make sense for it to be otherwise,
given
that you're telling the story.
You guessed it right. 2 and a red enchantment. Imminent Doom enters the battlefield with a Doom counter on it. Whenever you cast a spell with converted mana cost equal to the number of Doom counters on Imminent Doom deals that much damage to target creature or player, and then you put a Doom counter on it. So the way this plays out is you play it for 3, it has a Doom counter. You need to play a 1-drop. It doesn't do anything unless you play a 1 or can some other way get more counters on it. But let's just assume that you can't do that. You need to play a 1-drop to get it going. When you do, then if you play a 2-drop, it'll go to 3 and then 4 and then 5. Now, if you could chain it from 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, which is attainable and limited, that would be kind of a thing. Like you could build around it or try to make something happen or sideboard it in against the right matchup. But the fact that even just to get this rolling, you need a 1-drop, it makes it really tough because you have to just hold it in your hand and or have not cast it already. And plus you have to play 1-drops, many of which aren't that great. And anyway, whatever. I could go on, but this card's an F. I just think it's horrific and you should never have it in your deck.
Agreed. Imminent Doom is just not a card that's really going to work in any sort of real game of Magic.
No, and if you do go off with it, like get it up to 7, send me a screenshot for the love of God. Neheb the Eternal is next. This is the Mythic rare for red. It is 3 red for a 4/6 legendary zombie Minotaur warrior. Also has Afflict 3. So this is some good stats. 5 mana 4/6 with Afflict 3. I'm already like, sure, sign me up for that. And it even has extra bonus, though I do view this mainly as just a bonus. It says, at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, add red to your mana pool for each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn.
So the joke here is that when you attack with this, they're losing either 3 life because they blocked it or 4 because they didn't. And then if this survives, because this does have to survive, in order for you to get this bonus, then you get 3 or 4 mana and you get to play something. This card's good.
It's a good card.
It's not absurd, but
no,
it's
not. Yeah, I agree.
I think this is just like a solid B.
Yeah, I think so too. It's hard to kill. 6 toughness is a lot. It dodges the red removal spell. Like it dodges Sandblast. Like it's just a good card. Like it's a kind of card that makes you want to play it. But this is not one of those mythic rares that we're going to get to a little later where you're just like, oh my God, right? Like this card is really good, but there's cards that are absurd in this set, and this isn't one of them. I agree with you. Neheb the Eternal is a B. Last card in red. It's called Wildfire Eternal. I don't think it's that good. I tried it out. It's 3 in a red for a 1/4 zombie jackal cleric. It is a rare, and it's got really big Afflict 4. So you look at the 1 power and the Afflict 4 and you're like, well, why don't they just take it? And the reason is because it has an ability if it doesn't get blocked. It says if it isn't blocked, you may cast an instant or sorcery card from your hand without paying its mana cost, just for free, no matter how much it costs. I just found it hard to really take full advantage of this. Like I didn't have
I think this card ultimatum. It's not great. At a 4 mana 1/4 with Afflict 4, I think would not be horrible because in an aggressive deck, because it's kind of hard to kill. Your opponent is gonna, if they want to block it, they take 4 turns worth of attacks from it, or they just let it plink you for 1 every turn. But that's just not fantastic. It's just medium.
Exactly.
It's probably worse than like an Emberhorn Minotaur or something like that.
Right. I think so too.
In a deck with a lot of spells, it could give you some free mana, like casting Hieroglyphic Illumination or something off this seems really good. The problem is finding a deck that has A, a lot of spells, and B, cares about the 4 life from Afflict is not going to happen very often. So this card looks mediocre. It looks playable. It looks like a C. It just doesn't look like anything special.
Yeah, I think it's a C as well. When I've played it, people just say, okay, I'm not going to block it. Or if they do, they block it once and tag team on it and it dies. But if not, then they're just like, I'll just take 1, like do your worst. You play Wildfire Eternal, you play a land, you've got 5 mana anyway. Sure, you might get a temporary tempo boost, but nothing huge. I like C for Wildfire Eternal. All right, let's move on to green, where we've got Hour of Promise, which is 4 and a green for a sorcery at rare. It says, search your library for up to 2 land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Now, of note there, it does just say land cards. It doesn't care what kind. Then if you control 3 or more deserts, you get 2/2/2 black zombie creature tokens.
So you need to have drawn 1 desert, because the assumption here is that you drew a desert, you cast this, you got 2 deserts, and you get 2/2/2s.
Yeah, that's the card that you're playing, right?
Yeah, and that is a good card. 5 mana for two lands and 2/2/2s, and those lands also have other abilities sometimes, is very good.
Yeah, and you know what I want to do here, Luis? I want to flip it, right? Because what I'm paying for with this card is 4 and a green, I get 2/2/2s, and then also 2 lands, right? Like,
yes.
I don't just want to get the lands, because ramping from 4 to 7 or from 5 to 7, excuse me, is not, that's not a card I'm going to play. I need the 2/2s to make this work.
If you cast this and aren't getting the 2/2s, then the card is quite bad. So I think that you're going to want somewhere in the range of like, Ideally, like 5 deserts to make this card good, and 4 deserts to make it okay. But you also really do want those deserts to do something besides just be like cycling lands. Like you would want one of the uncommon deserts or a Cradily Accursed, anything that has a little bit of value once you get it in the late game.
Mm-hmm.
And ideally also some 6 and 7 drops in your deck so that the lands you get also matter. But that sounds like a lot, but a lot of it is kind of a package deal. Like if you have 5 deserts in your deck, probably 2 of them do something good.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of free. So as long as you have some higher end cards to play, I think this card is good.
I think it is. It's hard to make work because you do need critical mass on deserts. And don't forget the common deserts that cycle, like if those go in your graveyard, you're not getting them with Hour of Promise. And remember, it's not just the 2 that you're searching up. You need to have one already, that to make this thing work. So if you've cycled away 2 of them, you don't have one on the battlefield and you draw your Hour of Promise, you're probably just holding on to it until you find a desert. Like it really doesn't do that much. And you need a certain amount. I mean, what is it? 5, 4, 6, in your deck before you can feel comfortable thinking, because again, getting the 2 out of your deck's no problem, but the getting one on the battlefield can be, because you need critical mass of them in your library just so that you'll have that happen often enough.
Like I said, you want, I think 4 or 5 to make this card something. I'm like, yeah. If you have 3, you're kind of skirting on the low end.
Yeah, just be careful about cycling them. Where do you put it? I don't even know where to pick it. Like, I wouldn't first pick it.
No, certainly not. This actually is a build around. I think I would want to give it a build around grade.
Okay, that makes sense.
I would give it a build around B.
Okay.
I think that if you can get up to 4 or 5 deserts, then this card does deliver.
I agree.
Some deserts at least, and and some of the deserts are good. If you're getting it if near Deadlands, like the Black Desert, like that is very good.
Yes, for sure. And also, by the way, the desert deck has impressed me thus far. So I think that there is a desert deck, and this goes right into it. So build around B for Hour of Promise. What does Majestic Myriarch do? Assuming
4
that I
and a
said
green.
That right.
So 4 and a green for Mythic Rare. It's a Chimera. Its power and toughness are equal to twice the number of creatures you control, and it counts itself. So if you have this plus one other creature, it's a 4/4, and so on. At the beginning of each combat, if you control a creature with flying, Majestic Myriarch gains flying until end of turn. The same is true for First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Haste, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink, Menace, Reach, Trample, Vigilance, Bushido, Banding, Skulk. No, maybe not the last 3.
Skulk.
Basically all the keywords you can imagine that are like kind of real.
So it's a big vanilla creature that gets a lot less vanilla depending on what else you have.
Yeah. I think this card's very good.
Okay.
It's not insane. It's not Glorybringer, but when you cast this with 2 other creatures, it's a 5-mana 6/6. And if you can give it flying or lifelink, like those are like the 2 big ones that aren't that hard to get, then you're really doing it.
Oh, and yeah, for sure.
It doesn't seem impossible to give it like haste or vigilance, some of the menace. Mm-hmm. Like there's a lot of keywords running around, and this gets pretty big pretty quickly. It's not that hard to make it into like an 8/8. It's the kind of card that will lose out against a control deck that's like killing all your creatures, but in the right board, it's just so good.
Yeah, and I think the floor is really not that. I mean, a 2/2 for 5 you're not happy with, which is the actual floor, but more often than not, it's going to be at least a 4/4, at least a 4/4 for 5. And like you said, there's going to be times when it's just huge. Make a 12/12 with vigilance, haste, and lifelink attack you, right? Like those type of games are just going to be stupid. I think I agree with you. I think Majestic Myriarch's very good. Is it B plus? Is it A minus? I mean, it depends on what's on your battlefield, doesn't it?
I like it closer to B plus, but if you can pick up a good amount of lifelink is the biggest one by far, but also flying and vigilance and haste are also pretty decent. But if you have a lot of good keywords running around and a high creature count and potentially ways to make tokens, like Oketch's Monument's fantastic with this card.
Yeah.
Then it moves into the A range, but I would start at B plus. Like it's the kind of card I would take at or above like the premier uncommon / decent rare level.
I agree. Yeah. And don't forget about Trample too, because this thing can be just absolutely huge, on a stalled out board. All right. Next card is called Pride Sovereign. It's 2 and a green for a 2/2 cat. Well, that's not very good. It gets +1/+1 for each other cat you control. That's not that good either. But it has an activated ability. You can pay white. That's right. This is 2 and a green, but you pay white, tap it, and exert it to make 2 1/1 white creature tokens with lifelink. Ooh.
This is one of the best rares in the set because
Wow.
you play this, and if they don't kill it, first of all, it makes 2 Sacred Cats. That's already really good.
Yeah.
That's equivalent to drawing like a card and a half, something along those lines. Second, it becomes a 4/4. You can just pass with this, and they can't attack a 3/3 into it because you just block and make 2 cats. So, assuming they don't have tricks or whatever.
Right.
And if you have any way to untap it, like a Dauntless Haven, then you're just going to go off very quickly. And if you don't, 2 lifelinkers every other turn, is going to buy you so much time.
Right. And like you said, with a combination of the fact that it can block as a huge blocker. You view this as a gold card?
It is a gold card. You need to have white mana to make this card good.
Right, because otherwise it really is just a 2/2 for 3 that maybe sometimes is a 3/3 for 3 if you happen to have a Initiate's Companion or something like that. Huh. So it's going to get very high grades, but the fact that it's gold does hurt it a bit, does it not?
Yeah, it
I mean, you
does,
can splash the activation.
You can splash either half of this technically, and it's just so good. I'd give Pride Sovereign an A. It's a card I'd be happy to first pick. I would take it over every uncommon.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I really like that it's just single white to activate because, even cards like Painted Bluffs, things like that, any of your splash cards are going to enable that. And it's easy to do. So, all right, A for Pride Sovereign. What about Ramanop Excavator?
It's 2 and a green for a 2/3 Naga Cleric at rare. And it says you may play land cards from your graveyard.
Well, let's vanilla test this thing. It's a 3-mana 2/3, so that's kind of okay, shrug. The lands from your graveyard. Now, we know that there's a cycle of deserts in this set that cycle to draw a card. There's also the uncommon cycle that we did for our previews that let you sacrifice deserts for some type of effect. You could just get those back. One thing to note if you've never played with a card like this, it does take your land drop for the turn to do it. It's not, you can't just play them whenever, however many you want. It's still playing a land. And of course, you can only play 1 land per turn in Magic, but it just lets you play it from the graveyard rather than your hand.
Yeah, it lets you, like you said, cycle deserts. You can go off with Evolving Wilds.
Yeah. It's not that great though, right? I mean, there's some incidental value and a not super low floor, so it's probably fine, but this isn't like a bomb.
No, if I had multiple of the uncommon deserts that sack for good effects, or even Cradle the Curse, this card goes up in value, but this is we're still looking at like a C+.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking for Ramanop Excavator as well.
Yeah.
Ramanop Hydra is the next one. It's 3 and a green for a 3/3 Snake Hydra at rare, and it's got Vigilance, Reach, and Trample. So pretty cool. That's a nice set of stats. A little low on the power and toughness, though, at 3/3, but still, that's good. And then it gets +1/+1 if you control a desert, and it gets another +1/+1 if there's a desert in your graveyard. So it checks both spots. And then it becomes a 5/5 Vigilance, Reach, Trample, which is, well that's pretty nasty.
You would always play 4 mana 3/3 Vigilance, Reach, Trample.
Right.
And this is just frequently going to be a 4/4 and sometimes be a 5/5.
Yep.
The card is very, very good. Once I have this, I'm going to prioritize deserts. But honestly, I'm now something like 3 drafts in, but I think that the cycling lands are still a little undervalued. The cards are very good.
Yes.
I want like 2 or 3 cycling lands in all my decks.
Okay.
If I can get them.
And getting these payoffs, man.
And getting the payoffs for it is even better. So I would take Ramunap Hydra highly, and once I had it, I would put a little bit more priority on deserts. So I would say this is like a B+.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. This thing's just ramming up the score.
Oh, yeah.
B+ for sure. I have actually played with it as well. And yeah, I mirror your sentiment. It's good. Next is called Resilient Kenra. And this is kind of like the red one that we already talked about, the Earthshaker Kenra. This is the green version. It's 1 and a green for a 2/2 Jackal Wizard. So another 2-drop. When it enters the battlefield, instead of the whole haste and something can't block, this one pumps another creature or even itself. Have target creature get +X until a turn where X is its power. Where X is Resilient Kenra's power. So you play it for 2 mana, and it says some creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Okay. And then it's got Eternalize for 4 green. So 6 mana, you can get it back. And once again, you have to recognize that now its power is 4/4. And so it's giving something +4/+4 the turn you play it. It's actually really powerful.
This is the mirror of the Earthshaker Kenra, and it's comparable. This is going to force through damage early, and then late it's going to be a 6 mana 4/4 that gives a creature +4/+4.
You play it off curve most of the time?
Yeah, you basically, if this is your only 2-drop, you'll play it on turn 2. But if you have any other options, this will all be the last one you want to play. Because you want to save this for a turn when they have like Those Who Serve and you have a 2/2 and you can like punch through 4 points of damage that way. You also want to trade it off as soon as you can, much like any creature with Eternalize. This card is very good. It's not a bomb, but it's an excellent card. I would always be happy having it.
It's like a B, right?
I'll give it like a B+.
Okay.
I think that it's good in the aggressive green decks. It's less good in the defensive ones, but it's very good in the aggressive ones.
I just love cards that are good early and good late, so I'm always wary that I'll overvalue them, but I definitely like B+ for Resilient Kenra. All right, I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this next card, because this has been one of the ones that's really interesting to figure out. It's called Ronus's Last Stand. It is green for a sorcery. Create a 5/4 green snake creature token, but lands you control don't untap during their next untap step. So turn 2, you can have a 5/4, but you don't get much of a turn 3 if you do.
This is one of the cards I think it's going to, when we look at the Sunset Show, this is going to be one of the like, grown test type cards where like,
oh yeah,
they played Ronus's Last Stand on turn 2. All right, well that was fun.
Yep. I took 15 off of it before I started jumping or whatever.
I think the card is very good.
Okay.
I think Ronus's Last Stand is quite good. It's very powerful even in like the middle to late of the game, and on turn 2 it's absurd. There will be some games where having this is really awkward, where you're like, I could play a 2-drop and a 3-drop on turn 5, but then my just lands won't on tap. So that doesn't actually accomplish that much.
Yeah.
But the chance to spike it in 2 forests in your opening hand and just, already be 70% to win that game is pretty huge.
It is hard to do, right? Double green doesn't happen every single time, even if you're like split on colors, but still great card. 5/4 is huge for that amount of mana. And in limited, you just often won't have the tools to deal with it. Now, of course, sometimes, they'll go like Ruin Rat and you're like, no. But you got to remember that even with the tempo hit, it's still just a 2 mana for a 2 mana if you trade those off. I mean, that's how good this card is. It feels like you're giving up a ton there, but you're really just giving up those 2 lands not untapping if you turn to it. How highly do you grade Ronus's Last Stand? This card is just good.
I would give it an A-, I think.
Okay, because of that turn 2 just blowout
just
potential.
The equity on turn 2, and if you draft this card, try to fit 9 or 10 forests in your deck. Don't try to play like an 8/7 split or something. Yeah,
be careful for the deserts that you put in too. If they only make colorless, that's not going to help you with your Ronus's Last Stand. One other note: unsummon. Winds of Rebuke.
That is the answer.
Yeah, there are ways to kill this token. It's not like it just stays around forever, but not everybody gets those type of cards. So it doesn't knock the card. It's just something to keep in mind. A- for Ronus's Last Stand. What a beating. Last green card is called Uncage the Menagerie, and I've actually got a chance to play this one. This was Loading Ready Run's preview card, I think. Yeah, it's green X sorcery, mythic rare. And it says, search your library for up to X creature cards with different names that each have converted mana cost X. Reveal them, put them in your hand, and then shuffle. So let's break this down. What happens if you pay 4 mana? So green, and 2 for the X.
You get to draw 2 2-drops.
And 3?
You get to draw 3 3-drops.
Right. So it scales with the number of how many you get and what type you're doing. So where's the sweet spot? Well, it's probably 3 3-drops, right?
Yeah, the sweet spot is this at 5 mana, so you're getting 3 3-drops, and it naturally curves into playing 2 of those 3-drops on turn 6.
Exactly, which is what I did with it. Not that many decks will have 4 4-drops to get, and on top of it, it takes a really long time to deploy 4 4-drops, so you'd really have to have a stable board or whatever to make that work. So 5 mana, draw 3, but they're all spells. But they're all 3-drops. It's funny. Like, think about how would you compare this to? Let's just say it was 3 green, draw 3 cards.
I would say that at sorcery speed, that's generally going to be better than this card
because you can hit lands that you might need, or
you also sometimes will you'll just draft a deck with 5 different 3-drops and draw enough of them that this no longer is a draw 3.
Yeah, that's true. You do have to be a little careful about that. Yeah.
So,
It's pretty good, though. I mean, that's a nice mid-range punch. It's just, you get to that late part of the game and you want your green X-Spell to just sort of take over and win. And while it does give you some pretty serious card advantage, it's like each of them being threes in most scenarios just means that, like, if your opponent has a 5/5, a Colossopede, your Uncage the Menagerie still might not get you to where you want to be. And you kind of hope for that from your Mythic Rare here,
I definitely wouldn't look at this as like a bomb Mythic Rare, but this is the kind of card that if you see it 6 pick and you have a couple 3 drops already, you can pick it up and try to draft around it.
Yeah.
My inclination is to say that this card is decent and certainly a build around, but not something I'm excited about. Like, I would never take this over like an Open Fire or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, I would give Uncage the Menagerie a B-. I do think that it's powerful enough in the middle part of the game and for a reason. I mean, drawing 3 drops for 5 mana is pretty powerful stuff. I'm not in love with it. It's not the type of card that I just have to have, and don't get tricked by the fact that it has X in its mana cost to think that it's some big ramp mana sink. It's actually not, which is kind of weird.
It is not like that. It is a little bit different in terms of what your deck needs to be and how you end up spending the mana. So,
yeah. Also, we should remember that it can, if you have some bomb at 6 mana and you've got a ton of mana, you can just go search that up, even if you're not getting any more.
True. That's not a very efficient use, but it could happen.
Yeah, but I mean, if you have like one of these gods we're going to get to in a little while, maybe you end up doing it. What grade? I said B- for Uncaged and Menagerie. Where did you come down?
I would give it a kind of like a build around B-. I wouldn't. Okay. This isn't a card you can just take, I don't think.
Okay. All right, let's move on to white, which we'll start off with Adorned Pouncer. Adorned Pouncer is 1 and a white for a 1/1 cat. At rare, it's got double strike and Eternalize for 3 white. I like it.
Cute little guy.
Yeah, nice collar.
A bunch of spikes everywhere.
Yeah.
Card's fantastic.
It's really good.
It's just, it's a 2-drop that battles fine on turn 2, right? Because it's got double strike, so it's kind of essentially a 2/1. It's slightly better than a 2/1 even because it can kill 1 toughness creatures. And then later in the game, you Eternalize it, and it's a 4/4 double striking zombie. And the zombie subtype is much more important once you get to white and black, by the way.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
I would and plus it stacks well with combat tricks. Like if you brute strength this, you're just hitting them for 8.
Yeah.
So I would give Adorned Pouncer a B.
Me too. It might even be a B+. It's right in that range. The card's just really, really good. And when you get that 4/4 double striker, you're going to be like, oh, right. Okay, this is awesome. Yeah, I'm a big fan. Next one I'm also a fan of. It's called Angel of Condemnation. It's 2 white for a 3/3 angel with flying and vigilance at rare. So a 3/3 flyer for 4 with vigilance. I'm in. That's already signed me up. But it's got 2 really powerful activated abilities on top of that. The first one costs 2 and a white and tap it. And it says exile another target creature. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. And you can also pay the same cost, 2 and a white, and tap it, but exert it. And if you do that, you exile another target creature until Angel of Condemnation leaves the battlefield. And then the one note here as well is that since it does have vigilance, you can go ahead and go to combat, say, I'll attack you with this, and then use its activated ability and still get in for the 3 damage. Card's great.
This is a classic bomb. It's a 4 mana, 3/3 flying vigilance. You'd already play that card. It would already be good. And then it's got multiple sick activated abilities. One that protects your creatures or just fogs their creatures. You can use the exile, the top ability to, temporarily remove any creature from combat or dodge a removal spell. And then the second ability, if you have time to exert it, can just eat things forever, at least until this dies. So, I mean, it's an A. There's not a whole lot.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot arguing against it.
Yeah. One little trick. Don't forget that if your opponent has tokens, like let's say an Eternalize creature or something like that, just use that first ability to get rid of it permanently. It'll get the job done. A for Angel of Condemnation. Next is called Crested Sunmare. It's 3 white. This is a mythic rare. White actually gets 2 mythics, and this is one of them. It's a horse. It's a 5/5. So it's a 5 mana 5/5 horse that says other horses you control have indestructible. It's like, what? And then you're like, oh, okay. Because it says at the beginning of each end step, excuse me, if you gained life this turn, create a 5/5 white horse creature token at the end step. Yeah, this card's a beating.
It is a beating. You do have to
build your own army.
Some decks will have this and have 1 or 2 ways to trigger it at most.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still a 5-mana 5/5. So you didn't lose a whole lot by just putting it in your deck. And if you even get 1 5/5 out of it, the card is fantastic. You have a Cartouche of Ambition, you get 1 attack in, or just any other small ability to gain life. So the fact that I don't want to call it a build around, because a 5-mana 5/5 you can already just put in your deck. This just looks like a B+ to me.
Yeah, it's a B+. If you have 2+ ways to gain life, it's an A. Put it in your deck, draft it, first pick it. You won't be disappointed. And then look for some of the ways to gain life. Though I will caution that I would still stay away from pure life gain spells. Make sure that they're tacked onto a creature or an effect or something. Next is called Jeru with Eyes Open, which is a type of card that you open in a booster draft and go, ooh, I got a rare. And then you're like, oh, wait.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's 3 white for a 4/3 Vigilance, and it's a legendary creature human warrior. There's a lot of other text on it, but for almost every deck it's going to be in, that's the end of the text. So let's treat it as if it were that, and then I'll read it. 5 mana 4/3 Vigilance it's okay.
That's like a D+ though.
Yeah, it's like a C-, D+. It's just whatever. Like 3 toughness is pretty brutal. So the rest of its text has to do with planeswalkers. So it says when it enters a battlefield, you may search your library for a planeswalker, reveal it, put it in your hand, and then shuffle. And if a source would deal damage to a planeswalker you control, you prevent 1 of that damage. So again, big difference between whether you have a planeswalker in your deck or not with Jeru. As it sits in most cases, like you said, it's a D. It's just whatever.
You're not going to get a planeswalker almost ever. So
yep,
this card is just bad.
It's just like a D.
Look, if you're in the strange situation of having a planeswalker and then you see this card, yeah, take it. The card will be good.
Mm-hmm.
But don't worry about it otherwise. Don't let the fact that it's a rare and has a bunch of text on it fool you into thinking it's better than like this. This is worse than like a Lurching Rot Beast, I think. So.
Oh God, poor Jeru. Close your eyes, buddy. You're getting a real low grade here. Yeah. All right. So what? D? D-? I mean, it's still okay body. Like
I like D+. If you have to play a Jeru,
sure,
then it's not the end of the world.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
It is definitely not good.
Right. Next, what does Hour of Revelation do, and why didn't I draw it more times against Eric?
It is a 3 white. So 6 mana, 3 of it, which is white. Sorcery at rare. It costs 3 less to cast if there are 10 or more non-land permanents on the battlefield, and it says destroy all non-land permanents.
Big time sweeper.
Yeah, I don't think it's spectacular. I think it's fine. I generally don't like 6 mana sweepers because what ends up happening is when you have this card, you can't just wait till turn 6, right? You'll just take too much damage. So you have to play out some cards. And then maybe you take some damage. Maybe you get like a 1 or 2 card advantage by playing this. Your opponent now gets to the first shot at refilling the board. And you don't end up in a situation where you really got to like get a huge advantage out of it. It's really hard to maneuver a 6 mana sweeper, especially a triple white one, in a way that is hugely profitable. So I'm pretty down on Hour of Revelation. I think it's playable, but I don't think it's very good.
Okay, I think it's pretty good. I mean, you do occasionally get that reduction in cost that lets you maybe play something after it. It does hit problematic permanents as well. It hits all non-land permanents. So if your opponent got lucky and got a planeswalker, or if they have, some broken artifact or an enchantment that's just destroying you, this is one of the ways that you can get out of it. Against a slow deck, go back to, triple Amonkhet and think about like sandworm convergence and stuff like that. This is one of the ways that you can actually just, solve that problem. And I think that's definitely carries some value. But the points you raised are right. Triple white's really tough, and 6 mana sweepers generally aren't nearly as good as the 4 and 5 mana variety. You said you don't think it's very good. How not good do you think it is?
A lot of white decks aren't going to want to run it. If you're an aggressive deck, which I think white ends up being, I don't think it's particularly good. You also want like 9 or 10 white sources in your deck just to be able to cast it. And if you see it early, you can draft around it. But For the most part, I don't think it's worth doing that. It feels to me like kind of like a C plus.
Okay, I was going to give it a B minus. Maybe I'm too high on it.
I think so, because in order for this to be good, you have to have triple white and be getting an advantage of the fact that you're playing a sweeper. I mean, you had it in your deck tonight, and there were some games where it got so bad by the time you either got your 6th land, your 3rd white, or just didn't have this, that it wouldn't have gotten you into it, especially once your opponent is like holding excess cards in their hand.
Yeah. Another knock on it is Eternal Eyes. You spend your whole turn wiping away their board, and then they immediately have an effect that's strong. They go, okay, Eternalize my guy back, go. You described a scenario where your opponent gets to be the first one to rebuild. A lot of the cards are built-in rebuilds, right? Like they don't even need to have that spell waiting in their hand. They just have it sitting on the battlefield, and you're just like, okay, well, Hour of Revelation, go. And then like Eternalize, go. And you're just like, well, I'm right back behind again. So I think you're right. I think this is not a premium card in the set. So I like it. It is weird. You mentioned build around. I wonder if I just want to give it a build around grade. It just doesn't go into every deck.
Yeah, build around is probably a reasonable place. And in which case I would bump it to a B minus just because in the right deck, I think it can be powerful, but
it's just clunky as all hell. Yeah. All right. What does Aketra's Last Mercy do?
It is 1 white. It's a sorcery at rare. And it says your life total becomes equal to your starting life total. So 20 in the games that we tend to play. Mm-hmm. And lands you control don't untap during your next untap step. So this finally puts us to the question of how much life would a life gain spell have to gain before we like it?
Is 19 enough?
The answer is this is still not great.
No, it's not. The untapped lands thing's pretty brutal too.
The untapped land thing is brutal because it just gives your opponent another turn to hit you. This doesn't affect the board in any way. And you're not even always going to be able to gain 19 because sometimes, you're at 6 and your opponent has 6 power, so you have to play this, go up to 20, then they attack you down to 14. Your lands don't untap. Like, what did you even do?
Right.
So this looks like a sideboard card for constructed decks against decks playing cards like Lava Spike. This does not look like a card I want limited. I think I would give it like a D because maybe there's a super aggressive deck where you'll want this, you want this out of your board to combat them. Mm-hmm. But I think it's probably closer to an F. I don't think I'm ever going to play it.
I don't think so either. Poor Aketra's Last Mercy. I'm sorry. Another Mythic in white. It's called Overwhelming Splendor. This is a hell of a card. What does Overwhelming Splendor do?
It is 6 white. It's an aura curse. Mythic rare. It enchants a player. So it enchants your opponent. It makes all of their creatures into 1/1s with no abilities. And your opponent can't activate abilities that aren't mana abilities or loyalty abilities. So this basically, this is humility. This is the old card of that, but it's just on their opponent, and they can't activate things like Edifice of Authority. I guess they can't cycle either. They can't do a lot of things they would normally be able to do. So
does this read 8 mana win the game? Is it close enough? It certainly doesn't read it outright, but if you resolve this, are you losing?
You can. Part of the problem is if you resolve this and they have 3 creatures in play and you have 1, maybe they can still kill your creature and attack you for 3, or have a pump spell or something along those lines. This looks worse than Sandworm Convergence to me, though comparable. There's plenty of games this will win, but I think Overwhelming Splendor is definitely a build around. 8 mana cards are build arounds. It looks like a build around like B minus to me.
Okay, so not quite on that level of play it and we're looking awesome. It's a cool card. It has to be super powerful, to make this a one-sided effect, but 8 mana is no joke. That is a ton of mana, and it's double white, so you're not, splashing it too often either.
You might be able to splash in the like
gift.
And some, gift decks.
Assuming there's fewer of those now, but
yeah, likely. So I'm not very high on Overwhelming Splendor. I think that the fact that you can still lose after casting this, whereas Sandworm Convergence is very hard to lose after casting it.
Also, if they do get rid of this, their creatures just immediately go back to being awesome, right?
Yeah, and this isn't a win condition like Convergence is by itself. And It's not like I'm windmill, I wasn't windmill slamming Convergence first. Well, I was, but I knew I wasn't supposed to.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I agree. I think this is worse than Sandworm Convergence by a significant amount. It's also in a color that's less suited to get to that mana. It doesn't give you an immediate impact if it gets destroyed. A lot of times you just go, and then you get your worm anyway, and then sometimes they blow it up. I'd say build around B minus, C plus.
Yeah, I like B minus, but I think it's probably going to end up being closer to C.
Okay. Solemnity.
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 It's 2 and a white enchantment, rare. Players can't get counters.
What?
Counters can't be put on artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or lands.
Yeah, whatever. This isn't a thing.
It is not a card that's designed for limited. It's a constructed card. There's a lot of weird stuff you can do, but I'm going to give it an F.
It's just an F. Yeah. Okay. Blue. First card is called Champion of Wits. It is 2 and a blue for a 2/1 Naga Wizard at rare, and it says when it enters the battlefield, you may draw cards equal to its power, then discard 2 cards. So 3 mana, 2/1, draw 2, discard 2.
That is a card.
Where are you at on that?
That's a card that I would play, I think, most of the time.
I think so too.
Because
you're not getting ahead, but
no, but it filters nicely.
Yeah, it filters nicely. And it's 3, so you can do it even if you're a little behind on mana to try to find lands or something. And then it's got Eternalized. Now the Eternalized cost is pretty steep. It's 7 mana. It's 5 blue. But remember, when it comes back, it's a 4/4. So you draw 4 cards and discard 2. Now you're up 2 cards while doing a significant amount of sifting through your library.
You're up 3 cards. You got a 4/4 out of the deal also.
Yeah, sure. There you go. I like it. I've played it. It's good.
Yeah, it's good. Is it a B, B+?
It's a B. I have it at B. Yeah, I just think it's a solid B. If the Eternalize was 6, I'd probably move it up. But 7 is a lot. It really is a lot. And you're in blue, so sometimes you really have to wait a long time to get to that 7. We're not talking about turn 7 here, right? We're talking about turn 13 or something like that. So it's a much, much further down the line type scenario. But I think Champion of Wits is good. I'd give it a B. I'd play it in any blue deck.
Yeah, I like B for Champion of Wits.
Fraying Sanity is 2 and a blue for an enchantment. It's an aura curse that enchants a player. At the beginning of each end step, enchanted player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, where X is the number of cards put into that graveyard from anywhere this turn.
Yeah, I'm probably going to pass on Fraying Sanity here.
Build around F.
It's just a build around F. Like, if you're milling them, it mills them more, but milling them to begin with is usually the problem, and this card just does nothing by itself. Yes, when one of their creatures dies, they get milled for 1, but yeah. Fraying Sanity, F.
Yeah, it's an F. All right, this next one's interesting. Ben had this one in the Team Draft Super League. It's called Hour of Eternity. It's XX blue. That is one heck of a mana cost. It's a sorcery. And it says exile X target creature cards from your graveyard. For each card exiled this way, basically eternalize it. You make a token copy of it, except for it's a 4/4 black zombie instead. So we've got 5 mana eternalize a creature, 7 mana eternalize 2 creatures. That's probably the use cases that you're going to see the vast majority of the time, one of those 2 scenarios. Is it worth it to pay 5 mana to eternalize a creature?
In general, no.
Okay.
Because you're paying 5 mana for a 4/4, which is an okay deal. It's triple blue, which is tough. And you need a creature in your graveyard. So that's already asking a lot of different things.
But it is a copy of it. So it's not just
a copy.
It's kind of clone-ish in that way.
So you end up with, maybe a flyer or a lifelink or a menace or something along those lines. Or a come to play ability. Like that's very sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Where it gets interesting is when you do it for 7 mana. 7 mana, I think you're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, it does seem like that would be. I mean, making 2 4/4s with any type of abilities for 7 mana is pretty good. I mean, that's a big board swinging play. Card's hard to cast though. Triple blue. Suppose by the time you get to 7, it's not as huge of an issue. But 5 mana, you don't see a lot of 5 drops that cost blue too. That's a pretty steep one. I don't know. The card seems fine to me. I don't think it's a bomb, but it'll win games. It seems like a reasonable 7-drop finisher in a deck. I like the idea of spending 7 mana and getting 2 4/4s with maybe some abilities. That sounds pretty good to me. And I think it's by the time you get to 7, you probably have 2 creatures in your graveyard most of the time anyway.
It's a good win condition, I think. It's not a card you can just casually throw in a deck. Again, the triple blue cost is a real thing.
That's a real thing.
When you put a card like this in your deck, and then sometimes you're on 7 mana, but you're on 2 islands and 5 swamps, it really sucks.
Yes.
it adds a level of inconsistency that you really just don't need on a card that's already inconsistent. That said, if you have some decent lifelink creatures, I mean that is a pretty big game. So
yeah,
I wouldn't call it a build around. You can put this in basically any blue deck, but it's definitely not a bomb. I would give it closer to
C
probably a B minus.
Okay,
maybe C plus. Yeah,
I would give it a C plus. It's really hard to cast, and it has a lot of setup cost. And even when you do go off, I don't think that it's just like the game's over. It's probably pretty close to it, but I expect it to be really close to over for my 7 mana. Kefnet's Last Word. You want to end a game, here's a way to do it. 2 blue sorcery at rare. Gain control of target artifact, creature, or enchantment. Lands you control don't untap during the next untap step.
I mean, it's a control magic. It steals their best creature, or in some cases, I guess you can steal an edifice or a monument or something. But in every single case we've seen a control magic, it's been great. And even your lands on tapping still doesn't matter. This is an A.
Yeah, I agree.
When you take their best creature, then you can deal with the fact that you don't get to cast a spell the next turn.
Yeah, Kefnet's Last Word is an A. It's really, really, really good. And you're going to steal a creature most of the time. Next is a nice little efficient creature called Nimble Obstructionist. It's a 2 and a blue for a 3/1 flyer. It's a bird wizard. It's got flash. So 3/1 flyer for 3 is good. Throw flash on there. Hey, I'll take it. It's not really the most important part of the card, but a 3 powered flyer for 3 mana, that gets in there and does some damage. And then it also has cycling for 2 and a blue. And on top of all of that, when you cycle it, you can counter target activated or triggered ability you don't control, which I think will come up a lot less often in Limited.
It is less often. This will be cast like 80% of the time in Limited, maybe.
Right. Yeah. And what are the types of things you would even want to? You could counter a cycle? Yeah,
you can snipe cycling, especially if they're like stuck on lands or like a Traveler's Amulet or something.
A Traveler's Amulet, yeah. Evolving Wilds?
Yeah, you could snipe that. You can shut down them getting a Sandworm off of a Sandworm conversion.
Okay, that's not going to work, although it's probably better than having a 3/1 flyer against it.
So
whatever, like you said,
you're just going to cast this as a 3/1,
and
it'll be good.
Yeah, it's good. I think it's a B. I mean, this might even be a B plus just because of all the.
I like it at B plus. It's just a 3 power flyer for 3 mana is very good, especially since it's something you can play in a turn, and that is just a little bit of extra information your opponent doesn't get.
Right. Nimble Obstructionist, B+. Next card, it's called Swarm Intelligence. It's 7 mana. It's 6 and a blue for an enchantment. It says, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy.
Look, I like cards like this, but you have to pay 7 mana and then have spells left over. So
never.
As cool as it is, it just gets an F. It's just too much of a setup cost.
Yep, just an F for Swarm Intelligence. Next is called Unesh Cryosphinx Sovereign, and this is a cool one. It's 6 mana, 4 blue for a legendary creature Sphinx. It's mythic, and it's a 4/4 flyer, which is a little small. Right? This is 6 mana mythic rare. It's only a 4/4 flying Sphinx. It's not huge. It could have easily been a 5/5. It could have even been bigger than that, but it's not. It's just a 4/4 for 6. Okay. What does it do? Well, Sphinx spells you cast cost 2 less to cast. So who cares? There's not really that many of those around. I'm not saying the plural of Sphinx, by the way. Whenever Unesh Cryosphinx Sovereign or another Sphinx enters the battlefield under your control, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. Again, Sphinx Tribal, not really a thing. So when this thing hits the battlefield, you reveal the top 4. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. You put one into your hand and the other into your graveyard. So you often will draw 2 off of this when you play it as well. It's really good.
Yeah. The 6 mana 4/4 is, like you said, a little on the small side, but the fact that it makes all your Sphinx spells 2 less to cast is huge upside. You're gonna play
Come on, man. I just said it's not. That's not true.
You're gonna get the I guess it's not fact or fiction. It's what is that other card?
Is there a card that's 2?
Yeah, there's a card.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I think so. In any case, you're making your opponent split 4 cards is going to be 2 and 2 most of the time, or 3 and 1 if the one's very good. It's going to be good. It's better. It's, I think, on average, comparable to a draw 2.
Yes.
And a 6 mana 4/4 draw 2, you would be happy playing. So this looks like a B plus to me.
Me too. Yeah, I think Unesh is a B plus. It's a good card. Black. Amit Eternal. You know a little bit about this guy. 2 and a black for a 5/5 zombie crocodile demon with afflict 3. So you got to be thinking, if you listen to our set reviews for a while, you got to be going, what's the downside here? Because that's just off the charts. And there's a significant downside. It says, whenever an opponent casts a spell, you put a -1/-1 counter on Amit Eternal. And whenever Amit Eternal deals combat damage to a player, you remove all of the -1/-1 counters from it. So it's a weird card, but it really incentivizes your opponent to A, do something, and B, block. And even though they're going to take the afflict 3, you can't just keep taking hits from the Amit Eternal because all that work you did casting spells just gets erased every single time it hits you.
I've now cast this card a bunch of times, and it has ranged from very, very good on turn 3 to pretty bad on turn 5 or 6. You actually killed it by playing 5 spells.
I did.
And that'll happen some of the time. But the upside of playing this on turn 3 and just crushing your opponent is very high. It also works really well with combat tricks because your opponent's incentivized to like make risky double blocks, like block it with a 3/3 and a 2/2 when it's a 4/4, just because otherwise it'll go back up to a 5/5. And sometimes you'll draw it late game and they just won't have spells to play, or they'll have one spell to play.
And you got a 5/5, yeah.
It'll still be good. And it has a flick 3. It's gonna force through a lot of damage. So I think Amit Eternal is a B plus.
Me too. I think it's really good, but it's not a bomb. Yeah, I agree. This next card, definitely not a bomb. Man, this is the kind of card that you open up and you're like, oh, the artwork looks cool. It's 6 mana. It's a demon. It's a rare. What did I get? And it's called Apocalypse Demon. It's 4 black for a star demon with flying, which I got to say, you tell me that and I'm kind of in. Like in the dark, I would just take that card, pack one, pick one, but you wouldn't want to do that here. Apocalypse Demon's power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards in your graveyard. Okay, so, it's a 6 mana. It's probably going to be a 3/3 or 4/4 by then at least. The problem is, it says at the beginning of your upkeep, you have to tap it unless you sacrifice another creature. So you're like really all in on Apocalypse Demon. If you do sacrifice the creature, presumably if it's not a token, it puts another card in your graveyard, making it bigger and slamming in for a ton of damage. But you are risking a lot because if you just start sacrificing your creatures to keep attacking with the demon, you could find yourself in a spot where it gets bounced or killed and you've sacrificed half your board and you've really kind of lost out. So I'm not a huge fan of Apocalypse Demon. Yes, it can hit pretty hard. And if you've got a ton of tokens and some graveyard stuff, maybe it's okay, but that's a lot of setup cost for a 6-drop.
Yeah, I don't like Apocalypse Demon. It's just got too many variables and it can be too small. The big drawback of having to sack a creature every turn is substantial. You sack a creature, then this gets bounced or killed and you're out a lot. There's not a steady supply of tokens in this set, really. So I'll give Apocalypse Demon. It looks like a D to me.
Yeah, I'll say D minus. You really need a very specific type of deck, a tokens mill deck. I don't know. I'm D minus on Apocalypse Demon. Next card's good. Bantu's Last Reckoning. These cards are really tough to evaluate, by the way. This whole doesn't untap, your lands don't untap. It's another one of those. It's 1 black, 3 mana. For a sorcery that says straight out, destroy all creatures. Just boom, all of them gone. But like I mentioned, it has that whole lands don't untap during your next untap step thing.
So
we talked about a 5 mana Wrath. We talked about a 6 mana Wrath. How about a 3 mana Wrath?
So what I like about Bantu's Last Reckoning is that you can set it up pretty nicely because it costs so few mana, where you can play it and play a 2 or 3 drop in the same turn, and then you're on the board even though you are skipping your next untap.
Mm-hmm.
So you can set up a sequence of plays that's going to work out kind of well. And if you don't draw a ton of lands, you still get to cast this. Like you can have this in your opening hand and just snipe their 2 plus their 3 drop, and I think you'll be okay with that exchange.
I think so too.
Also, it's just good in the late game. So I like Bantu's Last Reckoning. I'd probably give it an A minus.
Yeah, I would too. I would too. I think it's good. I think it's really powerful for just 3 mana. Next is called Dream Stealer. It's 2 and a black for a 1/2 human wizard with menace. And it says, whenever Dream Stealer deals combat damage to a player, that player discards that many cards. So a 1/2 menace for 3, and when it hits them, they have to discard a card. That's pretty good. But it has Eternalize. You can bring it back for 4 black, in which case 4/4 with menace. And if it hits, they discard 4 cards. I dig it. I like this card.
Yeah, I think you would play that first card without the Eternalize, but it would just be a little bit dicey. But with Eternalize, this card becomes really good. It's also really good with pump spells.
Yep.
Not only because they're incentivized to double block, but also sometimes they just don't block and you just cast a giant growth and they have to discard 4 cards.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah, but that being said, it is very, very double blockable, right? Effectively, any 2 creatures in the game that double block it are going to kill it. And so you do need ways to kind of clear the way or get it down on turn 3 and do like a tempo play. You can kind of play that Scroll Thief game that we talked about, where you're like, get a creature out of the way, hit you. That's the kind of thing that can work with Dream Stealer as well. And like you said, with the Eternalize, it pushes it over the top. I think this card's like a B. I don't have it, off the charts. It's a B. It might be a B plus with Eternalize if that ends up being something that we're, really happy about all the time. But I'm going to go B on Dream Stealer.
Yeah, I like B for Dream Stealer.
Hour of Glory. This card is not fancy, but boy, is it good. Hour of Glory is 3 and a black for an instant that says exile target creature. There is other text. It is hopefully not relevant in limited. It says if that creature was a god, its controller reveals his or her hand and exile all cards with the same name. So, getting 2 gods in their mythics and stuff is never really going to happen. But your Hour of Glory is 4 mana instant exile target creature. That's nice. I'm in. Hour of Glory, I would take that at like the B level, maybe even the B plus level, just as unconditional exile removal. It's what's it called, right? It's a
Oblivion Strike at instant speed.
Yeah, I was going to say final reward for 4. Yeah.
1 less.
And I like Final Reward just fine, and this costs a full mana less. So it's good. I mean, this is a good card. It's a B.
Yeah, it's a daring demolition that doesn't destroy vehicles. And
exiles.
And exiles, yeah.
Wow, you went really deep with that. What do you give it?
I would give our Hour of Glory a B.
Okay. What about this next one? Razaketh the Foul-Blooded.
This is a 5 black. 8 mana for an 8/8 demon at Mythic Rare. It's flying and trample. You can pay 2 life to sack another creature to search your library for a card and put it in your hand. So this is a build around. This is one of the 8 drops I don't really like because you play Razaketh and your opponent bounces it and you lose. Or they cast Desert's Hold on it, or they play a removal spell. Or they'd attack past it. It doesn't have lifelink. It doesn't kill a creature when it comes into play. It doesn't do any of the things I really look for on my 8. So this is like a build around, looks like a build around D. I just can't imagine this being the payoff you're looking for when you ramp.
But it has Flample.
It does have flying and trample.
I agree with your assessment, by the way. 5 black is just oppressive. That is just very, very, very hard. Sure, I mean, it'll win the game. 8/8 flying trample. But, for 8 mana, it better, right? And when you're behind, forget it. So, yeah. Last card. Now, this one's really interesting. This is a card that I think I would have valued lower had I not seen it and played with it already. It's called Torment of Hailfire. It is black X sorcery. It's rare. It says, repeat the following process X times. And this is, by the way, a process that you'll see across multiple cards in the set, where your opponent is given the choice between losing 3 life, sacrificing a non-land permanent, or discarding a card. It's tacked on to Torment of Venom. It's tacked onto there's a enchantment. Yeah. So this one, though, lets you do it for however many times you can pay X, and it's black X. So, for example, if you do it for 5, it's 3 times that they have to make this decision. I normally find these cards to be lacking because when you give your opponent that many decisions across that many different types of resource, life total cards, and board presence, that's kind of everything. Usually they can just find the path of least resistance and still survive this type of thing. Where I like this card is as a finisher. Because if you're beating them down and you do this, let's say you get up to 6 mana and you do it for 4. If you do that in a relatively late game and they're staring down at 2 cards, they've got 3 creatures on the battlefield and their life total's at 9 or whatever, there's not a lot of good options there. They have to ditch 2 cards and lose 6, or ditch a card, sack a creature, lose, 6 or whatever. It could actually be a lot. And I saw this in a ramp deck, and I saw somebody cast it for 9. The X was 9. And it was just stupid. I mean, the game just ended. It did 15 damage or something to the opponent. Where are you at on Torment of Hailfire?
So this is one of the ones that I'm having trouble evaluating. It looks bad to me. It does.
Me too.
It looks like the kind of card that will often not do enough. I think in an aggressive deck, it could have good usage, just like Torment of Scarabs. Like I think I'm a little higher on that card than I was when we reviewed it last week.
Mm-hmm.
But in both cases, I think you want to be aggro. I don't think you want to be ramp. I don't think you want to be control. I think that casting this for 4 or 5 in an aggressive deck could do a decent job, but I still am not really seeing this card as something as a great end game because it needs other work to be done. Like you cast this for 8 mana, X equals 6. If you haven't done any damage and don't have a board presence, they can just take 15 damage, and it's not that big of a deal, and then discard a card.
Mm-hmm. That's true. If you've done nothing, that's true. But
if they're
it's
at
like
6
so
life,
much.
then
Mm-hmm.
if they're at 6 life, then yeah, this card is great.
Yeah,
we can make them discard 2 cards, sack 2 creatures, and go to 3.
Right. Or, there's times where they're out of cards in hand or they only have 1 and they're forced to sacrifice their board, and then you get to attack them and kill them anyway.
Right.
I think this card's better than it looks. Like I said, normally I'm very down on cards like this, and I'm going to give this a much higher grade than I would have thought I would have given it. And I do think you can put it in a ramp deck too. I think it's a B.
I think it's a B?
I do.
I think Torment of Hailfire is a C+.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to give it, normally I would give it like a C- or a D+. I'm giving it a B. Like I think this card actually just straight up ends games a lot better. And one thing that I'll also note is that when we're cycling all the time, we tend to flood out, right? You tend to skew the spell to land ratio in your deck in a way that makes you draw more lands. And Torment of Hailfire is a nice place to put all that mana.
All right. Oh, we'll see. This is one I think we're going to want to revisit.
I think so too. I can't wait. Okay, a few more cards here. We've got some gold, a couple of lands, and some artifacts, and then we are through. This is one of our last small sets, so these ones are a little easier for us. These cards are so stupid, Louis. So the first one's the Locust God. There's 3 gods in the set. We'll get to the other ones in a little bit. But can you read the Locust God and just try not to burst out in laughter at how good this card is?
It's a 4 blue-red for a 4/4 legendary god at Mythic. It's flying. It says whenever you draw a card, create a 1/1 blue and red insect token with flying and haste. You can pay 2 blue-red to draw a card on this card, which will then make an insect. Mm-hmm. And much like all the gods, when it dies, return it to the owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step.
And this is the worst one, by the way.
It is the worst one because it's the most expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And
the smallest.
All the gods, when they die, come back. To the dealer's hand, sure, it doesn't come back into play, but it makes them very difficult to kill. And they all just have unbeatable abilities while in play. And they're also fairly large themselves. So, spoiler alert, all the gods get A+.
Yep. They're just all A+. They're just absurd. Yeah. And again, this is the worst of the 3. Like the other 2 are even better. It's just insane.
So,
all right, Locust God, enjoy your A+. Splash for these, play these. These are some of the best limited bombs we've seen in a long time. Like these are, nearing Titan levels of good. Like these are just absurd Magic cards, and you should play them. Wait till we get to the other ones. What about Nicol Bolas God Pharaoh? That's our Planeswalker for this set. Actually, there's 2.
4 blue, black, red. So 7 mana.
Okay.
Planeswalker Bolas. It's mythic rare. Starts with 7 loyalty.
Whew.
Has +2. Target opponent exiles cards from the top of his or her library until she exiles a non-land card. Until end of turn, you may cast the card without paying its mana cost.
That's the plus ability.
Yeah, +2 is to play their top non-land card.
and then Nicol Bolas has 9 loyalty. Okay, sure.
+1, each opponent exiles 2 cards from his or her hand. -4, Nicol Bolas deals 7 damage to target opponent or a creature an opponent controls.
So you still have Nicol Bolas on 3 loyalty, and you get to kill any creature or your opponent depending on what their life total is at. Okay.
Then the ultimate is -12, exile each non-land permanent your opponent's control.
That's actually just bad. You don't even get to hit their lands?
Yeah.
Yeah, you just already won the game by then anyway. Well, so the question is this worth our 7 rather hard to cast mana? Yeah.
I believe so.
It's a winner.
I think that even going 3 colors in a format which, doesn't seem like it's fully supported. There's Traveler's Amulet, there's Evolving Wilds, there's that,
Manolith.
well, there's Manolith. There's also the 3-color uncommon land, Crypt of the Godbearer or something like that. And there's some green fixers.
What do you got against Manolith? Why you were just like dismissing poor Manolith?
I think Manolith's pretty mediocre.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. But when you have Nicol Bolas in your deck, it's a lot more.
And
tempting.
you know what that adds up to is I think Nicol Bolas is a card it's a build around. A 3-color card in this format gets that, but I think you can open Nicol Bolas, take it, and draft a good deck around it.
I think so too. It's just a game winner. You know, your play pattern is going to be most likely if your opponent has 2 or fewer cards, you play it plus and get rid of those cards, assuming that your board state's relatively stable, and then you just start plussing Nicol Bolas if you can, and then you just get to cast your opponent's creatures and stuff like that. So yeah, build around A. I mean, it's a game winner.
I would give it an A. This is the kind of card you want to build around.
Samut the Tested, not nearly as powerful, but only 4 mana. 2 red green for a planeswalker with 4 loyalty. +1 on Samut is up to 1 target creature gains double strike until end of turn. Okay. -2. Samut does 2 damage, divided as you choose among any 1 or 2 target creatures and or players. And then her ultimate is search your library for up to 2 creatures. By the way, it's -7. Search your library for up to 2 creatures and or planeswalker cards, put them onto the battlefield, and then shuffle. So you see a much more tempered take on a planeswalker here, right? Nicol Bolas, this whole set is about Nicol Bolas just smacking everything around. So they wanted to make a really powerful, crazy Nicol Bolas planeswalker. Samut the Tested, though, is a much more tame planeswalker. 1 creature getting double strike, sure, that's cool. Doing 2 damage divided as you choose, that's pretty cool too. And that's the thing that you're going to do the most with Samut. And those are good abilities. Those are not the game is over abilities, however. She seems to me to be like a B+ level card. I don't know that Samut is an A. Maybe I'm just wrong, but
I think she's closer to a B than an A.
Okay, I think so too. Like
you're gonna play her
anything of consequence, right?
You're gonna play it and deal 2 damage, and then end up with a 2 loyalty planeswalker in play. It doesn't kill 3/3. Doesn't kill anything that is really going to threaten her, and giving a creature double strike is just okay. It's not great. So I think Samut's fine. If you're red green, you'll play her, but I don't think she's better than some of the premium uncommons. I would give Samut a B.
Okay, B for Samut. Yeah, remember the thing is +1, your creature gets double strike. You really have to be far ahead to make that work, because otherwise I'll just crack back and kill Samut. All right, Luis, it's time to get into 2 more A+. We'll read these, but I'm going to preface it. They're just absurd. The Scarab God is 3 blue-black for a 5/5 legendary creature god. At the beginning of your upkeep, this card is so dumb. I had it in a draft. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. And no, Scarab God is not a zombie. Activated ability. 2 blue-black. Exile target creature card from a graveyard. That's any graveyard. You get a token. You eternalize it. It's a token that's a copy of it that's a 4/4 black zombie. And when it dies, when Scarab God dies, you can get it. It comes back to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. So it's a 5/5 for 5, and you can just make an army of 4/4s from either your graveyard or theirs that are copies of those cards. Remember, including their abilities, their enters the battlefield triggers, all that stuff. And you even, I did this multiple times, can just, on your upkeep, a trigger will go on the stack that says, at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses life, blah, blah, blah. You can then activate the Scarab God, snipe a creature, have a zombie, they lose a life, and you get to scry 1 right there.
Yeah. I mean, this card's just ridiculous.
It's just an A. It's just an A. It's just stupid, right? Like,
yep. It's worth splashing for. You should take it. You should.
Yeah, I just don't know how we can give it a higher grade.
Whichever Scarab God you pray to that you opened it.
Scorpion God is similar. It's 3 black-red for a 6/5. This one says, whenever a creature with a -1/-1 counter on it dies, you draw a card. That's pretty cool. And you can pay 1 black-red to put a -1/-1 counter on another creature. And then, of course, it has that same clause about returning to your hand when it dies. This one's really cool. You play it for 5, and then you say go. And your opponent, if they don't have a way to exile it, which there's a few ways, but if they don't have that, then they're just screwed. Because if they attack into it, you're just like block. And they're like, okay, I'll use my combat trick. You're like, cool, trade off. My Scorpion God dies. Next turn, end of step, comes back to my hand. Play it, go. And they're just like, oh. And then if you, God forbid, get to untap, you go land, and now you have 2 -1/-1 counters that you can just throw around wherever you want, whenever you want. In the middle of combat, killing a creature draws you a card if it had one of those counters on it. It's just unbeatable if you get to untap with it. And they have to basically kill you with flyers or exile it immediately if they can't. So A+, Scorpion God, unreal, touchdown, unbelievable.
Yeah, I really don't have anything to say about it. Like,
I don't either.
I'm never going to get to play with these cards, and I'm sure I'm going to lose to them a lot. So.
Okay, let's get these Aftermath cards out of the way. These are actually not that impressive. There's a few good ones, but by and large, there's some pretty mediocre stuff. This one's called Leave to Chance. It's 1 and a white for an instant. It says return any number of target permanents you own to your hand. No. Chance is a sorcery for 3 and a red that says, this is the Aftermath, of course. It says discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards. What?
Yeah, this card is bad.
It's terrible.
I think leave maybe a sideboard card against a lot of like Desert Hold or Unquenchable Thirst type cards, but in general, I would say that it's like a D-.
So leave it in your sideboard?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Yeah, seems really bad. This next one also not super exciting, at least for limited. It's called Reason to Believe. It's blue for a sorcery, scry 3. What do you feel about that? We often say that scry 3 is worth a card.
It's close to it, but I don't think I would not put blue sorcery scry 3 in my deck.
I wouldn't either. Believe is 4 and a green for a sorcery that says, look at the top card of your library. You may put it onto the battlefield if it's a creature card. Put it in your hand if it's not. Or if you don't. I don't like this one very much either, to be honest.
No, and the joke is that you cast them both in the same turn, you get a creature, but you paid 6 mana to scry a couple and draw a card and put a creature into play. Or put put that creature into play.
Colossopede, go. It's like, I don't know.
So it seems bad. I think in blue-green it's marginally playable, but it can't be very good.
Yeah,
Probably close to like a D.
Yeah, I have it at D as well. All right, now let's get this thing going because this one's really good. It's called Grind to Dust. What does this one do?
This one is very good. It's 1 and a black sorcery. It's rare. Put a -1/-1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. So I would certainly play that card.
I would already play that over any one of the modes that we saw on Leave the Chance and Reason to Believe.
And Dust is 3 and a whites, Aftermath, play from the graveyard. Exile any number of target creatures that have -1/-1 counters on them.
Woo! I like that.
6 mana to exile 2 creatures is very good. It is much better than that because Grind you can cast whenever it's convenient, and Dust combines with other random counters you have lying around. So this card looks like an A- to me. I
agree. It might even just be an A. The card's really good because early in the game, Grind at 2 mana kills any 2-drop and maybe even kills, a 2-drop and shrinks down another one or something. That's really good. I'm just going to go A on Grind to Dust.
All right, yeah, A on Grind to Dust. That sounds fine.
Refuse to Cooperate is kind of interesting. It's 3 and a red for an instant. It's rare. It says, refuse deals damage to target spell's controller equal to that spell's converted mana cost. What? Can you explain what's even happening here? So that's a weird card, right?
They play a 5-drop, and then while it's on the stack, you cast Refuse, and they take 5 damage.
Okay, so you target the spell as it's on the stack, and then it says, all right, well, how big am I? Okay, they take 5. Cooperate is 2 and a blue. It's also an instant. And, it's Aftermath. It says copy target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. I don't know.
This card doesn't seem particularly good.
I don't think so either.
In an aggressive deck, if you can get it to the point where they're at low life and you have mana up for Refuse, sure, you can do 4 or 5 damage, but that's situational. They won't necessarily even cast a spell. And then Cooperate seems pretty difficult to use. This card just looks like a D to me.
I think it's a D.
In a blue-red deck that has a lot of cheap spells, so Cooperate is good and is aggressive, I guess it's playable, but it seems pretty bad.
I agree. I like D on Refuse to Cooperate. It is such a situational card on so many levels. Oh, man, this next card is such a beating when it goes the right way. It's called Driven to Despair. It's 1 and a green. Driven is 1 and a green for a sorcery. Until end of turn, creatures you control gain trample, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. All right. Despair, cheap. It's 1 and a black. So you're in this thing for 4 mana if you want to do both. And you do want to do both because the aftermath is until end of turn, creatures you control gain menace. And whenever this creature deals combat damage, deals damage to a player, that player discards a card.
So in green-black, if you can hit with 2 creatures, you can end up drawing 2 and making them discard 2, which is a powerful ability for 4 mana.
Very much. I like it. The swingy nature of this card, I mean, this thing just blows out mid-game standoffs in a really nasty way. Really the menace being the thing that, from the despair side, makes it really hard to interact if you've got a big board of green and black. And the colors are, of course, perfect for it. Green and black are the colors that you'd want with this type of effect for the most part. I'm a fan. I think the upside, look, if you're behind, this card's terrible. It doesn't do anything. Right? If you're not attacking, if you don't have much of a board, if you're light on creatures, if your deck doesn't have that many creatures, this thing goes down. But if you're ahead or if you're at parity, this card can absolutely break the game open or finish the game for you if you've, gotten off to a quick start, but your opponent stabilized. Giving all your creatures menace is really a pain. And for 4 mana too, it's very castable on both the front side and the back. I think it's a good card. Not over the moon about it, but... Yeah,
you want a creature-heavy deck. You also want a relatively low curve, as casting this when your opponent has 1 card in hand isn't all that exciting.
Yes.
So this is looking to me like a C+, but I could be talked into a B- maybe.
Yeah, I'd go B- just for the high upside. I think you're probably right, though, that on average, that's how it will be. But when you do see it, you're going to be like, oh, no. Because, they're drawing a bunch, and you discard your hand, and, you've taken a bunch of damage. This next card is really cool. It's called Abandoned Sarcophagus. It's 3 mana. These are artifacts. Rare. It says you may cast non-land cards with cycling from your graveyard. Weird. And then it has this clause that says if a card with cycling would be put into your graveyard from anywhere and it wasn't cycled, you exile it instead.
So you want to play this kind of late because you want to fill your graveyard with a bunch of cycling cards and then end up getting to replay them all. You can also cycle them, but it is nice to be able to just cast them, have them die, then play this and get them back.
Mm-hmm, for sure. I played this in the pre-release. My deck was a little ambitious. I was playing the River Winder thing, the 5/5 hexproofs. And I was just cycling all of those things just very aggressively and just knowing that when I cycled them, I would probably be drawing more lands than not. I would just play all my lands and then I would just start getting those back. So I was able to churn through my library very quickly. And there was even some neat spells. Like, the counter spell that has cycling? It's
countervailing winds.
Yeah, countervailing winds. It's kind of neat. Like if you have this out, you can, if you have mana, you can cycle it, draw the card, and then just cast it from your graveyard. And that's all, your opponent couldn't see that coming because you had it in your hand to start with, and you get the card out of it. There's just some neat ways to make use of it. The obvious downside is that it does stone nothing when you play it, and that is a huge cost.
You spend 3 mana, and you need to cast 3 cards off of this in order for it to be good. Also, cycling cards tend not to be very cheap.
That's right. Yeah, that's just the nature
Desert Ceradons and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. So, do I like the card? Yeah, I think it's really cool. Do I think it's good? No. It's a build-around card, and I'd say it's a build-around C+, something like that. It is a type of card that does have a natural game plan associated with it if you have a lot of cycling, especially creatures that you can get back. But, if I'm playing to win, I'm not really going for the Abandoned Sarcophagus deck that often, I don't think.
Yeah, I would give it a build around C. It looks medium, but it could be pretty cool.
Oh, God, this next card, Luis. It's a nice one. God Pharaoh's Gift. I did not really recognize the power level of this card until playing against it, and now I love it. It's 7 mana. That's right, 7 mana for an artifact. And it says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may exile a creature card from your graveyard. If you do, I'm just going to use shorthand here, eternalize it, and it gains haste until end of turn. I was playing against an opponent at the pre-release, and they were trading down a lot of their creatures, and I'm just going, what is going on? They're a good player, and they just keep trading and trading. And I'm just I knew a red flag went. I'm just there's something wrong. They just normally wouldn't trade cards like that. and I just didn't know what was coming. And then they're like, I'll play this. And I'm like, okay, sure. And then they're like, they play it main, they get their guy back. I'm like, oh, okay, great. And it's like, it has some enters the battlefield trigger. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good. And like, they're like, attack you for 4. I'm like, sure, take it. And they're like, okay, go. And I'm like, doesn't that thing go away? And they're like, no.
Nope.
And I'm like, what? And they're just like, yeah, I just get to keep it. I'm just like, oh my God. And so they just built out an army of 4/4s. I'm like, how many creatures in your graveyard? He's like, 4 more. Like, game's over. Like, I just can never beat it.
Oh yeah, you crushed me with this card. And it is the kind of card that will win you the game for 7 mana. It'll get you a creature this turn, a creature next turn, a creature the turn after that. Their abilities, their enter the battlefield triggers all happen.
They're bigger often. They're 4/4s. Yeah.
This is like, again, this is like a 7-drop. It's not quite a build around. You can just put this in your deck. But this is the kind of card that would push me to drafting a control deck that wants to block and trade off because it's such a good payoff. I would give it a B. I don't think you can go A on this card, but I think it is a card that will win you the game for 7 mana.
Yeah, and the reason B is because it costs 7. That is the problem. But man, the card's good, way better than I thought it would be. This card sucks, I think. Hollow One. It's 5 mana for a 4/4 artifact creature golem. It has cycling. How bad can a card be that's a 5 mana 4/4 with cycling? I guess not that bad, but it also costs 2 less to cast for each card you've cycled or discarded this turn.
Well, this card definitely doesn't suck. It's just not exciting.
Okay.
It is
like a C?
I'd give it a C+. A 5 mana 4/4 with cycling 2 is
yeah, it's hard for that to reasonable. Be terrible. Yeah.
And then you can play this on turn 4 sometimes if you have a 1 mana cycler. Sometimes you might really be able to go off, like you get to like cycle 2 things and play this on turn 3, or if you have a way to discard that doesn't require mana, you could really do something. So
C-? C? C+?
I would give C+ for Hollow One.
Okay. Hello. This one, I need to know what you think about this, Luis. Mirage Mirror. What does this one do?
This is 3 mana for an artifact at rare. You can pay 2 mana to make it a copy of target artifact, creature, enchantment, or land until end of turn. I actually think this card is better than I initially thought it was.
I thought it was bad when I saw it. Like I passed it in a draft, and then Ben kind of made it look good.
You want a slow deck, but in a slow deck, it's really powerful because it's a clone that moves, right? It's a clone that copies whatever the best creature is at the time, and can even not be a creature like during their turn, for example, if you don't need it to be. So it's immune to sorcery speed removal in that way.
Sure.
This card looks like, I think it's going to end up being something around a B. And
man, I wish I didn't pass it in the draft I did.
Yeah,
I should have just tried it out.
It's not good in an aggro deck, I don't think, but I think in a control deck or a mid-range deck, it'll be solid. I think it'll be a B. It'll just be good almost every game, and just having it in play is going to be annoying for your opponent.
Yeah, and there's a lot of weird things that happen too. You can copy enchantments. You know, Ben was asking, what if I copy an aura? And I think the ruling is that it just doesn't have a thing to be attached to, so it just goes to the graveyard, which would be pretty bad. But also, a lot of enchantments trigger on your upkeep, and you can't really get those triggers, right?
No.
It's just like if they have a bounty of the Luxa or something like that, you can't steal that part of it. So I don't know. It's an interesting card for sure, rules-wise, but I'll go B-. I don't know. I need to play with the card myself, really, but I like what you said about slower game. That makes sense to me. Endless Sands is next. I think it's very good. It's a land. It's a desert. That part's good. It taps to add colorless. Okay, fine. You can pay 2, tap it to exile a creature you control. Target creature you control. And then you can pay 4, tap it, and sacrifice it to return each creature card exiled with Endless Sands to the battlefield under its owner's control. I'm not interested in this type. I mean, I can see a few ways that this could be okay. Like maybe you save your creature from removal, or maybe you block and get rid of it, and then you can get it back later, and you've kind of made a free chump block or something. But it's so clunky, right? 2 mana, tap it. That's 3 mana total just to get rid of it, and then 4 mana and tap it. So 5 mana your whole turn effectively to sacrifice the Endless Sands, and then you're down a land, and it only makes colorless, so it's kind of putting this tax on you all the time. Where are you at on this thing?
Where I'm at on this is if I want a desert in my deck, I'm going to be pretty happy with this card, because some decks have just wanted 2 to 3 deserts. Mm-hmm. You have Solitary Camel or Wretched Camel, and you just you get extra value by having them. If your mana base can support this, it is value added. You can protect your creatures from removal. It's especially good against cards like Desert's Hold or Unquenchable Thirst or Compulsory Rest. Anything that sticks around. And you can also reuse enter the battlefield abilities. So I don't think you'll play this all that often, but it'll be decent in the decks where you can afford the colorless mana or very much want a desert.
I'm really conservative with that part of it. I think that's why I'm so down on it. I don't think there's a lot of decks that willfully support just throwing a colorless land into their deck. D? Is D fair?
I would give it, I think, a C minus.
Okay. I'm going to go D on it.
I think you're going to play it like some amount of the time and not be unhappy when you do.
Okay. 2 cards left. One of them's called Hostile Desert. I actually played this to try it out. It was kind of better than I thought. It's a desert. So there's that. It taps for colorless. There's that. And you can pay 2 mana and exile a land card from your graveyard to make it a 3/4 until end of turn. It doesn't even get to stay that way. It goes back to just being a pile of sand at the end of the turn. I was playing blue, and I had a couple copies of the, look at the top 3 to put 1 in your hand and 2 in the yard. And I ended up just with lands in my graveyard quite a bit. And I just was able to activate the Hostile Desert and just get in or block. And I thought and I needed a desert, like you were saying. It kind of held its own. I don't think it's very good. Maybe it falls into the similar camp to the one that you described about, well, if you need a desert type situation.
Yeah, it's the kind of card that, again, the reason I give these cards not a D is that when you play them, you're not unhappy to play them, but you only play them in the decks that are interested in the combinations that they bring. You're not begrudgingly playing them. You're like, oh, this will fill out my deck because I have 3 things that care about deserts.
So how do we convey to the listeners that isn't common?
You're going to play this card less than half the time, way less than half the time.
Right.
But if you're the person who wants this, you'll get it with 5 cards left in the pack, and you'll play it because you have 3 or 4 ways to put lands in your graveyard, and this gives you a little bit of value.
Yeah.
What I don't want to see is this isn't, we're not saying it's open season on playing 7/7 and 2 colorless lands in your 16 land deck. Like you generally should not be doing that. You should try to play 8/8 or 8/9 and then play a Hostile Desert or Endless Sands in a deck that actively wants deserts and has ways to use the abilities. These aren't just free.
Right.
But I think, that'll make me want to give Hostile Desert like a build around C because it's just fine if you can work it. It's not a card I'm going out of my way to make work.
Yeah, I was just going to give it a D, but that's not in the build around. That's just in the, you're not going to play it that often. Of course, the most common way to get a land into your graveyard is going to be to cycle a desert. Last card is called Scavenger Grounds. It's another desert, another rare. It also taps to add colorless. You see a theme here. You can pay 2 mana, tap it, and sacrifice a desert to exile all cards from all graveyards.
Including the desert you just sacrificed.
Indeed.
I don't. I would only play this if I just wanted a desert and, you'd promised or our promise and had no other, not enough desert.
This is your last resort desert?
Yeah, but the text is blank, so
right, essentially,
or very close to it. So it's a build around D, and so you'll play it.
I like how we're now building around Scavenger Grounds. Hey guys, check out my sweet Scavenger Grounds deck. It's exile all the graveyards. Yeah, would you sideboard it in against, let's say, a God Pharaoh's Gift or something like that?
Probably not.
Okay, because it's a relatively low impact way to do that.
Yeah,
but still really bad. All right, that's going to do it. That's all the rares and mythic rares for Hour of Devastation. Some really good bombs. The gods really are the headliners. I think when we look back on this set, those are the cards that we're going to be like, oh, remember those gods? They were so absurd. And, then the rest are kind of a lot. One thing that I did think was cool, Luis, all the sweepers, right? This is supposed to be the Hour of Devastation, and it is certainly upon us. We reviewed 3 sweepers here.
Yeah, there are just there's a 3-mana sweeper, a 5-mana sweeper, and a 6-mana sweeper.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Or, depending on how optimistic you are, there's 2 3-mana sweepers and a 5-mana sweeper. So anyway, good stuff. And hopefully you have good luck in opening some of the better versions of these when you start drafting and playing sealed and such. That is going to do it for the rare and mythic rare. Am I supposed to do this part, Luis? Are you back on this?
All right. I guess this one's me. So that's going to do it for our rare and mythic rare set review for Hour of Devastation. You can find us on social media. Marshall at Marshall_LR on Twitter. Myself, LSV at LSV, or go to lrcast.com. As always, the show is brought to you by channelfireball.com, their best place for Magic strategy, singles, videos, and more. And by the Patreon, the listeners. So thank you every week for your support, and we will see you next time.
All right, so you're making me do a sign off here.
Look, you defeated me. We had to switch roles. That was the rules.
So here's the deal. I could do a really funny sign off, but then I would just be upstaging you, and I just don't want to do that to you. I don't want to set the bar that high. So instead, I'm just going to do a little talk here because I did start something recently that I'm excited about, and I wanted to give a background, just a short background on it, which is I started a YouTube channel, and it's called MTG Breakdown. And I'm going to talk about why, because a few people were like, hey, well, why don't you just put this with limited resources? And I think that's a reasonable question that they asked. And I put a lot of thought into this before starting something new. And basically the deal is that I came and I wanted to start doing video. I like to try to expand my horizons as far as the types of media that I make so that if I want to make something, I have the skill set to do it. So I took some classes for video. I wanted to do more video for LR, and I started to get into that. And I needed to practice because, you get the skill set, but then you need to figure out the speed bumps and the obstacles and the things that you run into doing the type of work that you're going to do. So I started doing some videos. I did a vlog. I actually did some cooking videos. I did a video for my stepdad's 65th birthday. And I did a video with you, Luis, where we sat down and went over one of the matches, one of the big matches from your professional career. And I was just trying out a whole bunch of different things along those lines. And I thought, well, I put in all this effort, and I might as well throw them up on the channel. Like I'm not gonna. They're just gonna sit on my hard drive. And people were like, well, these are really cool. I like these. And I'm like, well, that's kind of cool. And they're like, well, we want more. Make more of these. And I'm like, I'd really like to make more of these. But then I looked at it and I thought, well, these take me forever because I'm pretty slow. Like I'm getting better now, but it takes me video's hard. It just takes forever to actually do. And so I started doing a few more. I did a couple more vlogs, and I'm just like, man, I just can't spend this much time on this without building something out. I got to build something around it. I can't just do this, just for fun on the side because it's so time intensive. So that got my mind rolling on, should I start a YouTube channel? And I thought, you know what, I should. Because the truth is that a vlog doesn't really have a place on the LR video, YouTube channel. It's like, well, why is this here? Like the only thing about it is just that it happens to be me and often you, Luis, in it. But we're not talking about an actual, limited content. It's not helping you get better at Magic or anything. It's just messing around and giving you a behind the scenes look at, when we're out at the Pro Tour and the GPs and doing coverage and stuff like that. So I really felt that I had a few other ideas too of things that I wanted to be able to talk about that really just didn't have anything to do with LR. And so that's why I started a new thing. So like I said, it's called MTG Breakdown. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. You can subscribe, and anytime new videos go up there, you'll get an alert. I've got a few vlogs up there now with some other cool stuff coming, and we're just going to see how it goes. I'm a little nervous about starting it just because it's like I don't really know what I'm supposed to do exactly, but kind of excited. And so, yeah, that's it. I just wanted to touch base with you, the listeners, and let you know that was happening and why it was happening. That's it. See you next time.
So I can use sign-offs to shill for my products and services.
If you ever make a product or service, yes.
All right, we're forging new ground here.